Democracy That Delivers is brought to you by the Center for International Private Enterprise. Now, to your host.
Hello and welcome to SAIB's Democracy That Delivers podcast. My name is Anna Kampanek. I'm the Director of Global Programs here at SAIB. And the topic of our conversation today will be inclusion of persons with disabilities. It is an often underappreciated fact that persons with disabilities are the world's largest minority, comprising an estimated 1 billion of people, with approximately 80% of them living in developing countries. Many of them and their families are more likely to experience economic and social disadvantages. And that has been particularly pronounced during COVID-19 pandemic. Today, to talk about how we can do better, globally speaking, is Jacqueline or Jackie Lidubwi, who is a project lead at Internews Kenya. Jackie is a multi-award-winning disability media activist, trainer, and journalist. She leads the Inclusive Media Project across sub-Saharan Africa at Internews and has more than 20 years of experience in disability reporting, with prior experience working for television and Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. She is also an American Disability Act Fellow and a Global Change Leader at Coady International Institute in Canada. It is my pleasure to welcome Jackie to our podcast. Hi, Jackie. How are you doing today?
Fine, thank you, Anna. What an introduction.
It's a pleasure to have you. So let's hear a little bit more from you to make the introduction even more complete. Tell us a little bit more about your professional background and how did you become involved in the work towards greater inclusion of persons with disabilities?
Okay, thank you so much, Anna, for that question. So I'm a journalist by profession, and I'm a media producer for that. So I worked as a television producer for so many years at Kenya Broadcasting Corporation, and I was interested in journalism that changed the world, also known as communication for social change, communication development. So in everything I do, I try to see if I put a message there, how will it help the society? So that's how I started a program known as Touching Lives. So I wanted in that program to be able to tell stories of female genital mutilation, early marriages, burdens that women are undergoing in the society. And then there is a day I invited people with disabilities to have a session because it was something that is touching the community. That is when I got an awakening moment, because in that session, I met people with disabilities who are lawyers, professors, politicians. And all my life, I lived knowing people with disabilities are people who cannot do anything. According to the misconception that are there, people who are cast, people who've not gone to school. But here I was having a discussion with people who have really made it in the society even more than I as a journalist. So I was challenged. It's when I started toiling with that idea of coming up with a program that will highlight the challenges, the success stories, the well-being of person with disability, and even just changing the narrative around disability in the society. And at the same time, I also met journalist students who had disabilities. So I thought even that this will be a good opportunity to give them a chance so that they can even appear on national television as presenters, telling their own stories. And that's how the idea of Able Differently Show, which is a program that is airing on KBC even up to now, I think now 12 years later, started. And that's how my journey in disability movement started. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And indeed, I think that is very true in many societies that persons with disabilities remain subject to many social misconception that don't really appreciate, their full spectrum of ways in which they are able differently and able to contribute to the society in so many ways. To that end, can you tell us a little bit more about your current work, your current project at Internews that is focused on perhaps changing those perceptions and greater inclusion for persons with disabilities?
Okay, so when I started now Able Differently, I also realized so many people are unaware about disability. And even as a journalist, I lack skills on how to report disability. So for myself, I started a journey of self-teaching or also looking for opportunities right there. That's how I ended up at the University of Massachusetts as an ADA fellow, American Disability Act fellow. Through the process, I also met good scholars, people I had was just quoting during my thesis, like Professor Beth Haller, Professor Nina Bauman. So I got in touch with them, and they now started teaching me about the etiquettes of disability reporting. Because I was coming from also a disadvantaged community or even a disadvantaged angle. I'm an ally of person with disabilities. I'm not a person with disability. So I needed to learn the culture, also needed to learn the etiquette of disability reporting. So from there, that's how I started now being interested after this, what can I do to my society? And from my fellowship, I started now training university students how to report on disability. And I was an adjunct lecturer on part-time basis at St. Paul's University. So during my lessons, I used to teach them at least a unit on disability reporting. So my interest grew because I know in the universities, in the colleges, we are never taught about disability reporting. And that's why when we go to the field, we don't even report on disability because it's something we don't know. So in between, I saw Internews advertising for a project lead to head the inclusive media project. And that's how I applied. And I knew I'm going to get this job so that I can be able now to train journalists on a higher scale. So currently, I train journalists in Tanzania, in DRC, in Cote d'Ivoire and Liberia, basically Anglophone and Francophone countries. And I also work with organizations of persons with disabilities in those countries. So basically, it's just training because according to research, people with disability do not know how to work with the media. And also according to the research, media people do not report on disability stories because they don't have the knowledge and the skills on how to report. So that's what we are trying to bridge in sub-Saharan Africa.
Yeah, so you talked about training journalists or journalism students, but I believe your work also involves training persons with disabilities themselves. Could you talk a little bit more about that part?
Yes, so I not only train journalists on how to report on stories of persons with disabilities, but I also train persons with disabilities on how to use media. This is how to use mainstream media, which is radio, television, print, and also how to take advantage of social media, which is known as the media you can be able to own. You don't need to buy; you just need to have a platform, and you own that media. So, because persons with disabilities are out there doing so much in inclusive education, inclusive employment, but we don't see what they do because they shy off from the media, or they don't also have the capacity to know how to interact with the media, to work with the media, and also to take advantages of the social media platform. So that's what I'm also doing, working with journalists and along with persons with disabilities, and especially for them telling their own stories to persons with disabilities, because in the disability movement, we believe nothing about persons with disabilities without them. So in everything we do, persons with disabilities are on the forefront. So we train them, we train journalists, we link them up so that they can be able to amplify the work they are doing through mainstream media or social media.
So the training for persons with disabilities, I would imagine, there are two parts of it. One is just about the content, right? How to tell your story, how to be able to, how to understand social media and how you can communicate your story. But I'm also curious about the use of assistive technologies. Is that something else or just another aspect of your training? The how of getting online and using it as a tool for persons with certain kinds of disabilities?
Yes, that is also another work we do, because I remember in Liberia when we started now giving small grants to organizations of persons with disabilities, we were working with the women organization in Liberia, and most of the women had phones, but they had not even uploaded a WhatsApp or Facebook or even Twitter, because they didn't have a technical know-how, or even they imagined they don't belong to the social media space. So that is one of the important work we did in Cote d'Ivoire, and those women opened a Facebook page. We opened together. We also taught them on how to post and what to post and what to attract, and also even just advertising on Facebook. Like, we could also pay so that our content is spread to so many places. So we also now just gave them that confidence to know how to use their social media so that they can be out there, because people with disability, most of them are involved in small scale business like making beads, making dresses, doing artifacts, doing so many things. But social media is a platform whereby they can even take photos of what they are doing. They display them there, put there their number, and they get customers. And for Cote d'Ivoire, it was so successful. Apart from them sharing the products that they produce, they also were able to be connected to other organizations, international organizations, who came in and said, "You're doing a good job. Can we partner with you? Can you do this?" So social media is a powerful enabler for persons with disabilities. So that's why we really do trainings on social media, how to use the devices, how to take great advantage of it.
And I think, I guess there's also a lesson for all of us in, the technology we have, also having already built in assistive features on, how to design websites so perhaps we are more accessible to people with visual impairment, or even simple things when we post on social media. That is something I learned actually at the Forum on Internet Freedom in Africa, where we met in Zambia just a few months ago. The simple act of posting on social media, we can create alternative text description of photos that can help somebody who's vision impaired actually see in a way what you're posting about. So I think the technology has a lot of potential for inclusion, and it's exciting to see more and more people taking advantage of it, and organizations like yours helping with it. Yet, many barriers still persist. I guess it's a very broad question also because there are so many different kinds of disabilities out there. But from your perspective, can you tell us what are some key barriers that persons with disabilities continue to face in Africa and beyond, in your experience?
So, for my experience, there's something we call the models that the society has created for persons with disabilities, the lenses in which we see disability and how we describe person with disability. The first lens is the traditional model. So, in traditional model, we believe persons with disability are caste. Persons with disabilities are people who cannot be able to amount to anything. So when we still view people with disability on those traditional models, like people who are cast, like people who don't belong, like people who are not supposed to exist, then the barriers we've created in our mind, we are not going to remove them right now. So the barriers, the traditional model barrier. There's also the super creep lens. This is where we see when a person with disability does something like in Kenya, I remember in 2018, there was a top student who was a girl with disability. It was news all over the country, all over the world. So it's like you think a person with disability cannot top. And when they top, we see them like people who are superheroes. Those are the lens we see person with disability with. And those are the ones that create what we call the barriers. And then there's also what we call charity model. The lens we see as person with disability was just supposed to be beggars and not people who can be productive. We are supposed to be maybe during Christmas holiday or Ramadan holidays to go visit children's person with disabilities, give them some money, give them some food, because we believe they cannot work and make their own money. So when we have all those experiences and all that knowledge about person with disabilities, they face exclusion in terms of education, in terms of employment, in terms of family life, because people will still think people with disability, they still see people with disabilities on all those lenses. And that's why we come up with this model of inclusion and participation, whereby we are saying people with disabilities, when including people with disabilities in our day-to-day life, it is not a favor we are doing to them. It is their human rights. They have a right to education, right to employment, right to a dignified life. So inclusion and participation. Children with disabilities should be able to go to school with children without disabilities in the same class. But that class should be modified, like a wheelchair can be able to go there. And a teacher should have basic knowledge on disability so that he can be able to know how to teach that child with disability. So when we start that inclusion, then all those stereotypes we start dismantling them at a very young age, because even when children grow with others who are different from them, they start appreciating them at a younger age. And even when children with disabilities learn in an inclusive school, it is good for them, because when you take them to special school, we don't have special employment. We don't have special universities. So those are some of the stereotypes that the lenses on how people view persons with disabilities. And in some countries, and still in Africa, you will still hear people with disabilities are being killed. A good example is people with albinism in Tanzania and in Zambia. They are still maimed. Their body parts are being taken away to go for the witchcraft, because they believe a person with albinism has this some special magic. So there are still those backward thinking about disability. And also through the inclusive media project, we are trying to demystify those stereotypes, because we are teaching about language and naming, which is very important. So we say, don't say an albino. In Swahili, they call them zeru zeru. Zeru zeru is loosely translated as an evil spirit, and that is a person with albinism. So if you believe a person with albinism is an evil spirit, that's how we continue those backward things that are being done, like killing, maiming, because we believe they are not people, they are evil spirits. So in the training, we tried also to look up at the importance of language and how language can be empowering and disempowering.
Thank you so much for that, Jackie, and for highlighting that despite many physical and otherwise barriers out there for inclusion of persons with disabilities, so many barriers are actually in the minds of all of us, and that's something countries and societies around the world need to work on. You already talked quite a bit about the role of the media in helping to change that by helping to shape a different narrative, by helping to bring the voices of persons with disabilities to mainstream programming where they have this platform, by showcasing success stories, professional success stories of persons with disabilities, by helping to change the language to make it all inclusive. I think we're seeing that in other countries and other languages, including English, right? I think it used to be more of a speech pattern to say disabled person. Now a more inclusive term is person with disabilities. So I was wondering if there's anything else that comes to mind on what the media can do in the space of inclusion. But I'm also curious, beyond the media, what about the local private sector? So as you know, SAIP works with chambers of commerce, business associations, economic think tanks, other kinds of independent private sector organizations in countries around the world. And also, as you mentioned, many persons with disabilities are entrepreneurs themselves. What recommendations would you have for local private sector to make the workplace and the economic space more inclusive?
Okay, thank you so much. So the way I said, media plays a very important role in shaping the narrative. So when we see stories of persons with disabilities in the media, we change the perspective. When we see persons with disabilities being presenters, we change the perspective. And when we see them as workers, as colleagues, as managers, we change the narrative of disability. So for private sector and even for employers, when we employ persons with disability, everybody gains from disability inclusion. It is not just about people with disability, but everybody gains because of so many reasons. The first one is access to talent. When you employ people with disability, you get access to untapped talent. You know, we are used to just the talent of people without disabilities, but when you make a bold step and have people with disability, you get an opportunity to tap that talent that is untapped. And another one is you increase of innovation because of different approaches to problem solving as an organization, because people with disabilities, they live differently, they solve their problems differently. As you write with your hand, but a person with disability who doesn't have limbs will use their leg to write. They have innovative ways of doing and solving and living around. So if you have someone with disabilities in your organization, be sure problem solving skills high tech, innovation high tech, because they have that capacity of being innovative, because all their lives they have been going around things a person with disability just assume. Another one is you also increase engagement and retention. because when people with disability feel that they're included, they become very loyal and enthusiastic about their work. So you won't have a person with disability who has been employed who feel that they belong, jumping from one job to another. They will feel that they are feeling included and they just want to stay at that job and give their best. Another thing is also even for your company, or even organization, better reputation, because customers value companies that show real commitment towards inclusion. So they will think this company values everyone, the minority, people with disability. Why can't we be loyal customers? So we encourage employers to hire people with disabilities because of that. And lastly, it benefits all of us. It is beneficial for everyone from inclusive workplace, not just with disability. When you have inclusive workplace, it is beneficial for everyone. Remember, disability is the only club we don't apply. You just maybe get an accident by accident. You are welcome to the club of people with disabilities. Maybe you end up on a wheelchair. So when you create an inclusive work environment, it will benefit you when you join that club without applying. So that is something people should have at the back of their minds. They should know as long as we are alive, we are members, we can join disability club without even any application. I beg to end there on that.
Indeed, and that's very well put. So you highlighted very clearly that inclusion and empowerment of persons with disabilities is not just the right thing to do. There is also a strong business case for doing so in the economy. And it's also a legal right. In fact, most countries or many countries around the world are signatories to the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Constitutions of many countries have explicit provisions for inclusion and non-discrimination. I wonder if you have thoughts on how different sectors of society can better work together to help deliver on the commitments and to help leverage really the benefits of inclusion in social terms and in economic terms. So what are some of the ways in which the media, the private sector, civil society organizations, and governments can work better to empower persons with disabilities?
So it needs a commitment from the government, from the civil society, from the media. And the commitment should come from high level. When we are talking about the government, it should be seen from the president, the prime ministers. Should be able to implement all those laws that have been signed, all those UNCRPD. Most countries are signatories. But after signing, do they implement those laws? So it needs commitment from the highest level from the beginning. And also for companies, when we are talking about, and even organization about disability, we need to see the backing of the CEOs, a statement from the CEO, a statement from vice president and presidents of organization. When we have a high level commitment, then it is easy to include persons with disabilities in our society. And also, we can remove we can do all that, but we have barriers. As long as we have environmental barriers, it is still hard. Our buildings should be accessible. We are talking about universal design. They should be accessible for persons with disabilities. We have buildings in Africa which goes to fourth floor and maybe even 10th floor, and the CEO is sitting on the 10th floor. How does a person with disability go up to there if they don't have a lift? So we need to remove barriers so that when even we say about employment, there are no barriers. In media, we need to have sign language interpreters so that we include everyone. So when there is news, you can be able to see what you can follow news if you are someone who is deaf. And that's what we've managed to do in Kenya. All television stations during news and breaking news, and also during national holidays, you have to have a sign language interpreter so that the media can be inclusive. You can have information about disability, but if it is not inclusive, it is not getting to all of them. So we remove those barriers and then we be accessible. So when we do that, I think the journey of including persons with disabilities in workplace, in communities, in countries will begin.
Indeed, all great recommendations for countries anywhere really to take on, and for different segments of the society to take on, and also consider how they can work together, advocating and fulfilling the commitments to inclusion. We're coming close to the end of our time in the podcast. We are also coming close to the International Day of Persons with Disabilities on December 3rd. With that in mind, my last question is about where can our listeners learn more about your work, perhaps follow you on social media, or if you have any specific resource that you would want to highlight ahead of the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. Do share any recommendations with our listeners.
Okay, thank you so much. So the International Day of Persons with Disabilities is coming up on 3rd. And the theme of this year's International Day of Persons with Disabilities is touching on technology. Yeah. So the theme of this is transformative solution for inclusive development, the role of innovation in fueling an accessible and equitable world. For me, I think this is a very timely theme. And if governments and people, civil society, private sector can really work on this, then for the next 1 year, we include people with disability in development innovation. I think we will have a more equitable world. So to follow me and to learn more about me, on Internews website, we have a page dedicated to persons with disabilities. It's reporting disability in the media. So when you click on that page, you can be able to find everything, all the stories we've written about disability, people with disability, who you can follow, the role models, the organizations that you can follow, what is happening in the disability world. On reporting disability on Internews website, you can be able to get all that. I also talk so much about disability on my social media pages. So on Facebook, I'm at Jackie Njagi Lidubwi. On Twitter, you can find me at Jackie Lidubwi, and also on LinkedIn, Jacqueline Lidubwi. So if you just do that, you can follow the work I've done. And also I have a YouTube channel. If you just go on YouTube, Jackie Lidubwi, you will also see some of the stories I've done on disability, especially featuring women with disabilities who are making strides, who are doing very positive things. So I'm on YouTube, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, and I'm on LinkedIn.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ms. Jackie. And we'll be sure to also post those links along with the podcast so that our listeners can learn more and follow you. Many thanks again for taking your time. It's been a pleasure, and we look forward to staying in touch.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm so excited that you were able to link up after the FIFA conference in Zambia. Thank you so much. In Kiswahili, we say asante sana.
Asante sana.
Democracy That Delivers has been brought to you by the Center for International Private Enterprise. For more information, please visit sipe.org.